This is the Ivy League Hoops Hour, where we cover all things men's basketball in the Ancient Eight. We are your hub, your go-to, your day one. But not really, though. I'm your co-host, Coach Sidney Johnson, former head coach of the Princeton Tigers from 2007 to 2011, and former three-time captain of the Tigers in 95, 96, and 97. My co-host is Princeton alum and former Princeton graduate assistant coach Lawrence L. Boogie Schuler. Lawrence, how you making out?
Feeling great, Coach. How about you?
I am doing fantastic, my brother, and super excited about this week's show. We have Dean Noll, senior standout guard for the Cornell Big Red, joining us, and our special guest, special guest, Lawrence, is Stephen Goldsmith, the photographer for the now defunct PrincetonBasketball.com website that our faithful listeners will be reminded that it is the inspiration for this podcast in terms of what Stephen Goldsmith and Jon Solomon, what they did over the years in terms of covering Princeton men's basketball, but I would say Ivy League basketball as a whole. And we've tried to do that with our podcast, shining a light on all 8 of the institutions and letting people know the wonderful stories, the characters in play, on the court, off the court, the trends, all that good stuff. So super excited to have Stephen joining us with Jon as well. And Lawrence and I have enjoyed every single moment of this podcast, folks. It's been awesome to have you join us. Please continue to write into us at ivyleaguehoopshour@gmail.com. Suggestions, topics, you know the deal, guests to bring on the show, and your reactions to everything that we talk about. So without further ado, let's get into this week's episode of the Ivy League Hoops Hour. Folks, you are with us on our segment of My Eyes Don't Lie to Me. The week that was in the Ancient Eight men's basketball, games, teams, players, coaches, all of this momentum leading up to Ivy Madness, which is right around the corner. Can you believe that? We've got our chief in-game correspondent, Jon Solomon, yours truly, Lawrence L. Boogie Schuler. We're going to get right into it. And we'll start with Jon, as he saw the first of a pair of clashes between Princeton and Harvard. This one started off at Jadwin Gym.
Yeah, it was senior night at Jadwin Gym on Friday, a 74-67 win for the home team. Jalen Llewellyn dropped in a layup with his right hand as the shot clock was a second away from expiring to finish off the Crimson, capping a 29-point performance with a extra glint in his eye that I've noticed recently. Starting 5 of their 6 seniors, Princeton got out to a 19-11 advantage on 5 three-pointers from 4 different players. In what I thought was an audacious move versus a terrific shooting team, Harvard switched to a 2-3 zone on defense, and shockingly, it worked. The Crimson pulled even at 21 when Mason Forbes slipped to the rim for a slam and extended their lead to 5 on a 3 for Cale Catchings. Perhaps as shocking as the fact that the zone was successful, took away a lot of Tosan Woman's room to maneuver in the paint, was the fact that Harvard dropped the defense up 30-26 and never seemingly returned to it. We should talk later about how coaches sometimes overthink successful stubbornness. If something is working at either end, do it until your opponent stops it.
Indeed.
There were no personal fouls for the Crimson in the opening 20 minutes, which saw them lead by 2 at intermission. Top scorer Noah Kirkwood had 11 to pace Harvard, but in the second half, the Tigers switched Tosan to him on the perimeter, and he was significantly less effective, with a single free throw line jumper to his name. Louis Lesman made it 44-41 visitors in transition. Llewellyn tied the score from outside, and on Princeton's next possession, a nice design inbounds from the baseline we've seen several times this season to Ryan Langborg deep behind the arc, pushed the Tigers up 3. Llewellyn scored and was fouled to finish the 8-0 run. Harvard, who needed this win a whole lot more than the Tigers, went back up briefly with under 8 to play on a wing 3 for Lucas Sakota. However, Llewellyn hit from 3 and Kirkwood, back on the floor after sitting from 13:51 to 8:07, beat Tosan to the basket. Perhaps fearing a block, Kirkwood stopped to pivot instead of going up strong. His turning attempt was off the mark. Tosan at the other end went left for a three-point edge. The Tigers kept the Crimson at bay. Sakota did have a chance to tie that was off target. Llewellyn was fouled floating left on a three. Sakota's foot didn't give him a chance to land clean, and the senior made all of his attempts. A Kirkwood pass sailed out of bounds, and Langborg converted both ends of his 1-and-1. Harvard never got it within one possession again. I want to note the performance of the national anthem by senior Elijah Barnes' sister Amaya, one of the best renditions I've heard at Jadwin or anywhere else. He left his teammates to give her a big surprise hug right after she finished the song, and you could see how proud he was of her throughout. While I'm talking about the Barnes family these past few weeks, Elijah has been a terrific backup to Tosan, doing exactly what you would want from a reserve. He comes in, makes a shot, adds an energy play like a block. Really great to see. Also, this was the 300th consecutive Ivy League game I've attended.
And all who know, the 300 Spartans gave their last breath to defend it. Ho, ho, ho.
Thanks to both of you for all you did to help make this a reality. And that will be the last I mention this streak for fear of jinxes.
Battle is over when I say it is over.
Jon, it's been wonderful to have you share your experiences with us with Princeton basketball over the years. That predates this show by a mile. So we are indebted to you, and you've added so much to the show. So no thanks necessary. The glint in the eye of Jalen Llewellyn might be perceived as a death stare by all of his opponents. The kid is playing at a high level, and with him and Ethan Wright and Tosan clicking, this team is looking NCAA ready. I just think they have it all back. I would love to dive into your comment about coaches not sticking with things at work. But before I do, I would say that 2-3 zone, and I'm kind of pulling back the veil a little bit. Princeton offense teams want to run their offense, and that's usually against man-to-man. And so at various times throughout the years, whether it's my own teams or Mitch and Brian and Coach Thompson and Scott and Carmody and so on, zones can sometimes trip us up because our identity is the Princeton offense, right? Well, if you play zone defense against us, you're taking away something that's so fundamental to how we want to play that you're at least forcing us to beat us at our lesser preferred style of play. And that's not always a bad thing. It's actually a pretty good strategy. So those are my 2 cents there. What do you say in terms of coaches in general not sticking with what seems to work?
Are you surprised that teams don't play more zone against Princeton? I guess the risk is that if you're sort of going inside out and overloading the free throw line, you're going to set up open looks from three, but that just wasn't what happened in this game. And does it take more out of you to play zone? I just don't know why they didn't continue doing what was working. I think about a football team where it's just, we're just going to run it over the right guard every time until you stop us.
The irony of you bringing up a football coach is amazing. A football coach is one of the first gentlemen that came to me with that lens and said, hey, why in basketball, when coaches are doing something that's working, do they go away from it? I'll never forget that. I was working at Princeton at the time, and we struck up this conversation, and it was an honest and open exchange. And but he had that lens. He's like, I see that so much when I'm watching college basketball. And he also included like substitution patterns. Sometimes, a team's just clicking all of a sudden, and then they just sub out one guy. And that can just change the whole flow and dynamics of what's going on. So whether it's a zone defense, like you're suggesting, substitution, like this gentleman was talking about. And I've always held on to that and tried to be cognizant. I'm not the perfect coach, and I'm on a microphone right now, not on the sidelines with a clipboard in my hand. So I understand that. and I want to be respectful of that. But those are some of the things that, as soon as you said that, I'm like, yeah, those are some of the things that I've tried to hold on to and try to improve on more as a coach, is stick with what's working, make them adjust, force them to adjust. And if they don't, stick with it. The only thing I can counter with, and I'm going to blame analytics for this a little bit, is a lot of teams, a lot of coaches will look at the 3-point shooting numbers of a team and be like, well, we can't play zone against them, because zone obviously is trying to keep the ball out of the lane and stay in front of everybody, but will kind of concede 3-point looks even if they're trying to contest them. And if you shoot a certain percentage, coaches will just, off their heads, will just say, we can't play them zone. Where you want to really look at, how does a team want to score? Can I craft a game plan given the strengths of my team and my personnel? Can I take that away? And if a team beats me doing the second, third, and fourth best thing they do and not the best thing that they do, then they're better than me. And I think that that's something that I learned from some of the greats that I worked with that have gotten me closer to trying to stick with things that work for as long as possible in a game. Yale Cornell.
With Yale having won so resoundingly in the first matchup in New Haven, I think it was a statement win for Cornell to get this one back and to lock that 4th seed up before the final weekend. The other thing that stood out, looking at the box score of the minutes, and you could see this during the game, you had 11 guys playing double-digit minutes. Yeah. And you got especially good production out of the 3 centers rotating in, Dixon, Ragland, and Hansen.
Yale was also missing one of their bigs in this game.
Yeah, Jarvis, right? And that really hurt him. Kelly did what he could. He wasn't particularly effective. And Jarvis has been good for them at times, and certainly against undersized teams without potent bigs. So yeah, they were a little bit shorthanded, but Cornell needed it badly. And I sometimes I get nervous when a team doesn't have one of their key guys, especially when I find out last minute, because we've been preparing for a certain version of a team, and then they're a little bit different. And I'm just always nervous about the maturity of my guys in terms of whether they'll relax thinking, oh, so-and-so's not there. And then somebody else on the opposing team comes in and drops, 20, 30, So I would say that credit Cornell for doing what they had to do. Next game on the docket, Penn visiting the Dartmouth Big Green.
For Dartmouth, you look at that result and perhaps you wish that if you had one more go your way at some point earlier in the year, we're looking at an entirely different playoff picture.
Isn't that right? You got to call it what it is. I mean, McLaughlin and his staff have continued to push these guys, and obviously there's a huge impact of Jordan Dingle not being in the game and making the trip. Jelani Williams continuing to deal with, I believe, a wrist injury. But hey, you got to play the games that are in front of you. Aaron Rye was outstanding, 27 points, 11 rebounds. He's averaging 12 and 7 on the season. I'm wondering, as good as Brendan Barry has been, outstanding shooter, is Rye their best and most versatile player? And might he get some Ivy mention over Barry? I think he split the votes. I don't think they've been outstanding enough that, you'd have 2 big green players being acknowledged all conference, but one of those 2 kids has to be recognized, and the team as a whole, in terms of continuing to fight and scrap, you got to call it what it is and give them a lot of credit.
Penn only dressed 11 players and lost Nick Spinozzo at halftime, so they definitely were up against it with the roster that they brought to Hanover. But credit to Dartmouth. Ever since you've said it, Coach, on the show a few weeks ago about how Dartmouth is a tough gym to play in, I've noticed that every result there has been close or gone the Big Green's way. Want to mention Jalen Gainey, 9 for 9 from the field. darn close to a triple-double with career-high 25, 12 boards, 8 blocks, which is a program record. I don't care who you're playing. That's a pretty special day.
It really is. I feel really bad for him. For Cho as well, came equally close to a triple-double, 17, 8, and 7. We had David Korzanowski on the show last week, and he's talked about Cho's assist numbers going up and up. It shows the continued commitment to playing with his teammates and making them better. Those two forwards are all Ivy League kids without a doubt, and it's a shame that they weren't able to kind of pull it all together. Just not enough wins to find their way in the top 4, because those two are scary good and have played really, really well. That's going to be a head scratcher for me for a while. And not only because I predicted them, to be honest, they're just so good from top to bottom, and yet it just didn't seem to happen in league play.
It's going to hurt Brown losing such great talent in their senior class, but looking forward, they've got a Keno Lilly and Dan Friday backcourt, and I think that's going to be pretty good.
I agree with you, and don't leave out Ferrari as well. I mean, the kid is like absolute competitor, awesome on-ball defender, and makes threes. So you're right. They've got 3 guards coming back who will be very good, and just have to make sure they've addressed some things recruiting-wise to bolster up that front court. John, why don't you fill us in on that rematch? Harvard hosting Princeton.
Sunday afternoon, Tigers take it by 1, 74-73 on a Tosan of Womon drive to his left in the final 5 seconds. Princeton traveled to Harvard on Sunday for a game originally scheduled for January 2nd that was pushed back nearly 8 weeks due to COVID, resulting in the second meeting of these two teams in under 48 hours. It is overly simplistic, but the Tigers just have too many guys. Sure, they're only rotating 8 players, but the other teams in the league don't have as many guys. Some teams have 1 guy, some teams have 3 guys. Princeton's the only Ivy squad who can offer 5. The Tigers strategically spaced Jalen Llewellyn and Tosan in isolation with 3 shooters to reward if the defense pulled towards either. You have to pick your poison.
Now, a clever man would put the poison into his own goblet because he would know that only a great fool would reach for what he was given. I'm not a great fool, so I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you.
Elijah Barnes was big off the bench again. Look at this stretch, assisting a Ryan Langborg wing 3, then grabbing an offensive rebound, following a bad Ethan Wright missed tray and scoring as Mason Forbes fouled him. Up 3, Barnes curled to the rim with the basketball and appeared shocked that no secondary defense from the Crimson awaited him. He laid the ball in easily as Evan Nelson finally slid over to foul him. The first-year Nelson, who had 11 in the first half on a nice mix of speed and control, tied the score at 32 on a drive, but Langborg had no difficulty locating wide-open Tosan for a dunk as the defense collapsed away from the Tiger big. To start the second half, Harvard scored on 4 straight possessions, but Princeton equaled them point for point. In this stretch, there was a moment where Drew Freiberg missed a 3, and amid 4 Crimson jerseys at the free throw line, Tosan still came away with the loose ball. He was fouled on a drive and made both his free throws. The Tigers moved up 51-43 on a Llewellyn 3 after his teammate Barnes dove to the floor to secure a steal. Another excellent energy play that doesn't show up in the box score. Harvard recorded the afternoon's next 13 points, taking their first lead of the day on a tip follow for Josh Hemmings. Louis Lesman went through the defense for a 3-point edge, and Hemmings wound around Tosan down low to make it 56-51 Crimson with 9:28 left. Drew Freiberg's far side 3 was huge, ending the run and pulling Princeton back within 2. Lucas Sakota scored at Tosan, and Freiberg could not hit a second time, but Tosan fought for the offensive rebound, the continued possession ending with the local boy Wright hitting a 3. There were 7 lead changes in the final 7 minutes. Tosan loves to go left, and he did just that for a 59-58 Tiger edge. Sakota floated to his own left for 3 as Langborg brushed by for a 4-point play. It was 70-69 Princeton after a third Freiberg triple from up top over Forbes' extended reach, and at the other end, Llewellyn took the charge on a Forbes drive. Reviewing the game a couple days later, Harvard sure had chances to end repeated defensive possessions, like when Tosan could not finish inside, but the Crimson were unable to secure the rebound. Princeton retained out of bounds, and Wright drove baseline for a reverse and a 3-point lead. Clinging to a 1-point edge in the final minute, A Tosan handoff screen went off Llewellyn's knee and rolled out of bounds deep in the backcourt. Sakota drove, but was ultimately unsuccessful. Princeton had the ball again and the lead still. While time dwindled, a pass by Langborg got deflected and Sakota drove desperately with the shot clock off. His layup spun out as Freiburg fouled him. He made both his attempts, and Harvard was one stop away from the win. Langborg got dinged up on the play and had to come off the floor. Harvard totaled just 4 personal fouls to this point, thus 2 to give in the last 17.6. They used 1 as Llewellyn started towards the basket, but instead of breaking up Princeton's rhythm as Freiburg inbounded from the baseline to up top with 9 seconds showing, they did not stop Tosan's 4 dribble drive as he soared left again at Forbes for the winning basket off glass. I don't know if there was confusion about stopping the Tigers' worst free throw shooter early or not, but there were ample opportunities to foul prior. Princeton's 11th conference win was also one of their most balanced. Tosan had 18 and 8, Llewellyn 16, Wright 11, but this was bolstered by 9 each for Freiburg and Langborg, plus 8 off the bench from Barnes. Even Matt Alaco's only field goal attempt of the day was a big one, a 3 set up by a Llewellyn drive that made it 62-61 Tigers after Catchings had just connected outside. Like I said, they got too many guys. Tigers 3 for 12 from distance in the first half, 8 for 14 in the second. Noah Kirkwood sat the final 11-19 on the bench, scoring his team's prior 5 before exiting for good after reaching double figures. I don't know if there's an injury for the senior, but it was unclear what was going on. After a good shooting performance at the line on Friday, Princeton was 5 for 9 on free throws. And again, for the second time in as many weekends, my father was mistaken for Coach Kirill. Is there a market on Cameo for a Coach Kirill impersonator who will berate you for not being able to go to your left in exchange for your hard-earned $40? If so, I know someone who fits that bill. You got to pay $75 for him to give you compliments.
Well done, John. Tigers are rolling, and John's dad is confused for basketball royalty. Not a bad few games to take in.
Now Princeton's up to 37th offensively in Pomeroy, and the more I think about the tournament, I love good defense, but it's hard not to take the best offense over either of the defenses that they're going to be going up against.
That'll do it for My Eyes Don't Lie to Me. Thanks again to Jon Solomon, Lawrence L. Boogie Schuler. We will have more games to preview next week. 1 game away for all the teams in the Ancient 8 towards Ivy Madness. Folks, Jon Solomon, the creator of the website PrincetonBasketball.com, is a dear friend of this show. And Lawrence and I have been thrilled to have Jon as a consistent contributor to the Ivy League Hoops Hour. Jon started PrincetonBasketball.com. Sadly, it is no more. But when it was terrific. Jon's poetic coverage of all things Princeton men's basketball was matched by the emotion, energy, and exceptional eye of his collaborator on camera, Stephen Goldsmith. At the time, Stephen was just a high schooler in Princeton, New Jersey, good friends with Leor Levy, the son of former Princeton student athlete and coach Howard Levy. Stephen would go on to graduate from Lynn University and has followed his passion for sports with volunteer stints at the 2014 NCAA Women's College Cup, the 2015 Major League Soccer Combine, as well as a career track in fan engagement and sales with the Houston Dynamo and the Real Central New Jersey Soccer Club. Today, Stephen works as an account executive with the Somerset Patriots, the AA affiliate of the New York Yankees. Let's listen in on our conversation with Lawrence, myself, and the brain trust behind PrincetonBasketball.com, Jon Solomon and Stephen Goldsmith. Stephen, to be very honest with Lawrence and myself, and Jon knows he's heard this and you may have heard it on the show, but in many ways, the Ivy League Hoops Hour is our tribute to what you and Jon were able to do with PrincetonBasketball.com. We obviously love Princeton basketball. We love the Ivy League, and in various stages of our lives, being not right in Princeton, New Jersey, PrincetonBasketball.com helped us stay connected to the program and to what things were going on in the Ivy League in general, whether it was his words, your pictures. I know for me personally, as a coach there, having you guys document what was going on with a fair and balanced but artistic and professional way was really awesome. And I think that you guys have given birth, honestly, to what Princeton is trying to do within their own athletics communications. It certainly is the beginnings of something that we're trying to do here. And so I just honestly want to thank you both and talk about those days and talk about also anything, literally anything that you guys want to talk about. But can you take us, I'm putting you both on the spot in terms of how you came together and what you guys were trying to achieve with PrincetonBasketball.com. Did you talk about it? Did you kind of plan? Did you fall into it? Just let us in a little bit on the sausage making that became one of the best mid-major college basketball sites that I think has existed in some time.
So I met Stephen when I think he was 13 in 2007, and he was a student at my wife's school. And I was told by, I think, another teacher there that there's a kid who loves Princeton sports and taking photos. And after a football game, we were both at Jadwin Gym for an open practice, and little did I know then that that would be the start of a journey that would last through Stephen being in high school. He started taking photos for the site, started going on the road together, stayed with my friends, crashed on their couches. You know, he really became a member of our family as we traveled the Eastern Seaboard together. And his photos were terrific and such a huge part of the site. And I'll let him get a word in edgewise in a second, but I think you were asking Coach about, you know, did we talk about it? I mean, I don't think there was barely a time that we didn't talk when we were on, you know, these long drives to North Carolina and back or whatever. So a lot of conversation about basketball and the program and ideas. And I've said too much. Stephen, please help me out here.
Yeah, that's really how it started. You know, after a football game and open practice, I went with my small camera at the time just to go and take photos. Knew it was open to the public and thought they're not going to turn away a 13-year-old kid taking photos, hopefully. And so then I think Jon and I just made eye and connected. And he's like, oh, you were that person my wife's friend and wife was telling me about, a student at the school. And just the rest took care of itself. And then he told me a little bit about this site. I was kind of like heard of the site, but didn't know too much about it at the time. And I said, hey, can I take photos? And at that time, I don't know if it was really something that was on Jon's radar, but I think it came naturally. Like, I want to attend these games. I don't want to pay for a ticket. Can I sit on the sideline and take photos? And the rest is history. And we had a lot of fun and still, you know, at games talking about the memories of this game, driving down to Duke and getting stuck in bumper to bumper, literally traffic, you know, people throwing footballs on 95 to just complete silence after a tough loss in Brown, you know.
Yeah, and I think that you being really young was an advantage in a lot of ways, because I think about things that other players or families would say to you that then you would relay to me that would help my reporting. To steal a Coach Carillism, like, you really see, so you see all this stuff that's happening or overhear things and, you know, from benches and, you know, nothing slips by this guy. You were kind of like this secret weapon that I had.
No, totally agreed. It was like kind of investigative journalism, but not too much like trying to hurt anyone. But, you know, after games, parents would say something about a player or something this, and I was like, oh.
Stephen, let's go back a little bit to being a 13-year-old boy with a camera in his hand. Like, where did that come from? And we're not just being nice. Your pictures are outstanding. They capture emotion. They capture the joy that we have of watching the Tigers. You capture a lot. one have that desire to work and play with a camera like another child might want to play with a basketball or a video game? And then how did you get so good?
Yeah, it really started with my dad. My dad has always been a photographer just for fun. And then I'm the oldest of three. And so he would always take photos at our sporting events. And, I thought, oh, this is fun, seeing these photos and this cool stuff he was doing. And then I said, Dad, can I borrow the camera for a few things? He's like, was kind of nervous, 13-year-old borrowing an expensive piece of equipment. He's like, sure. And then as time, he continued to trust me. I spent some money on new equipment that he ended up using as well. And so it just came naturally once I realized I was not going to be the star of the Dillon youth basketball team or a high school team. I wanted to do something. And I didn't know what that something was, and always being interested in taking photos and just behind the lens and seeing facial expressions. When my dad took photos, I was like, this sounds cool. How do I do this? So I took like one class about like intro to photography. I'm like, I don't want to take photos of just people, like portraits. Sports is my passion. Why not combine that and just more practice, more photos, and the better I became.
And I'd completely forgotten until now that there was one game along the way that you couldn't shoot and your dad filled in for you before my dad filled in for you for years.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I think you always had really good ideas about, I think I'm going to try and look for this in this game, or, hey, it's the Division III game. There are players that you don't have photos of in-game action right now. I'm going to try and make sure that you have all of those on file and in case you need to use them down the line. There was a decent amount of thought into what you did and do.
Yeah, and I would also say that's very true. And also knowing the game and looking at some of, coach your tendencies and trying to be on the right side of a Kareem Maddox slam, or I'll never forget the Dan Mulready shot for Siena, that incredible shot. And I happened to be on the right side. And I thought, okay, this is perfect because, I went behind the bench to see the timeout and kind of thought, okay, looks like he might be drawing something up for the angle I'm going to want to be sitting on, but it's basketball. Anything can happen. And sure enough, I got that great shot of his 3-pointer and it was wonderful. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. Or sometimes during timeouts, I would talk to the referee, hey, I'm the only photographer here tonight. Can you jokingly try to avoid me? And he thought that was pretty funny that I would say something. And then he looked at me. If I got the good photo, it's like, you're welcome for not being in your way.
That's really good. What a wonderful story. I'll tell you one of my personal favorites, as you shined a great moment on a win of ours against Siena, coming back and probably with that gutsy group of guys. I remember everything that Marcus Schroeder gave to the program, recruited by Joe Scott, played a boatload of minutes. When I got there, I was really hard and demanding on him, benched him at times, was really pushing him to lead in a different way, in a way that I wanted him to. And boy, did he respond with every bit of heart and soul that he could give. Outstanding leader. And we lost to Brown at home. And Brown, credit Jesse Yeagle, would beat us here and there, and we're a thorn in our side. And there's a picture you captured as Marcus, I believe, had a chance to, if not win the game, at least send it into overtime at the line. And I think he missed, maybe the front end of a one-on-one. And so they got the rebound and dribbled it out or something and won the game. And Marcus Schroeder, do you remember this, Stephen? He's laid out on the ground
Absolutely.
with his hands buried in his face. And I was like, I love that kid. And he's a man now. But I love what he gave. And even in losing, I'm going to follow that guy because I know how much he cares about this. But you do remember that picture?
Absolutely. I remember that photo of him on the ground because he just put so much into that game, the season. And sometimes it's tough as you're the only photographer at these games, or people start knowing you and you capture tough moments. But I remember a few weekends later, after the game, I think his dad or mom said something about that photo and said, that's Marcus, the competitive person, but it showed everything there and they loved it. So you have a job to do to take the moment, but, it's fun to capture that moment and look back on it, look at him now and his success and be like something that's probably he'll never forget that game and just being there for that moment.
It's an all-time great photograph. I have something that came up when I was trying to look up when Stephen and I met. I found something when I was searching my archives. Am I wrong, Coach? You have a photo or had a photo on your desk at Fairfield of you and Lawrence that Stephen took after the Ivy playoff. Am I wrong there?
No, you're not. That's one of my favorite pictures. Yeah. Princeton's been really good to me. Basketball has been really good to me. I've lost games and had tough moments, and I've learned so much about myself in those times. And then I've had my fair share of highs as well. And honestly, Stephen, you've captured a good amount of those. You've captured those moments. I'll have them in my head, obviously, and there's video and things like that. But some of the pictures, you kind of freeze those moments in time. And so I don't know if Lawrence probably has that picture framed with me blacked out, but I have that one on my desk as we're both grinning ear to ear.
My entire online image presence and half of my framed pictures are all Stephen Goldsmith pictures. And I even give them away as gifts, and that was one of them.
I was going to say, speaking of gifts, Lawrence, you were crucial in my surprise high school graduation present to Stephen, getting a basketball signed by the entire team and coaching staff. And I like to do surprise things for people that I like a bunch and care about. And if I can embarrass them, all the better. And so being able to successfully pull that off with your assistance was a mission that I was delighted everyone was up for.
And I was like a kid in a candy store, like, wow, I don't expect anything. And to see Jon come with a basketball signed by that team, the 2010, 2011 team, because I probably went to a lot of games and missed school a lot. And it resulting in NCAA tournament, to see a signed basketball by everyone, including the coaching staff, meant a whole lot. And it's still in my room to this day. And I look back on it and be like, that was fun. I'll never forget the journey that Jon and I went on, or throughout the Northeast, down to Tampa, booking flights, the one-game playoff, and you name it.
Guys, all true great basketball programs. And I'm very adamant about this. It's something that Lawrence and I have talked about as well. They're rooted in people and relationships. The game themselves, soccer, tennis, basketball, whatever, it's what brings people together. But it's about those relationships, and it's not just the coaches and the players. It's the managers, it's the trainers, it's the fans, it's the photographers, the writers. I mean that like passionately. I mean that fervently. And so you two have become a part of the Princeton basketball program. And that is true, and no one's going to tell me different. That is true. Acknowledging that, I just would love to hear, what does Princeton basketball, and if you want to go out further in terms of Ivy League basketball, what does it mean to you guys? You mean a ton to it, but what does it mean to you?
I would say Princeton basketball means a connection that I never would have thought I would have had as a teenager in Princeton. I knew I was a fan of the program and going to games, but never felt the connection that I still do to this day. From going down to college in Florida, living in Texas, but always checking the scores and seeing how the team is doing it, and knowing I was indirectly a part of a team that, I never played in a practice or played in a game, but I felt a connection through my photos that brought me there, and that I'll just never forget. Those 4 years in high school, Sydney, your 4 years from, the rough start, your first year, to turning it around felt like an Odyssey that I was a part of. And I just am forever thankful that I could provide some memories for everyone involved, and just always felt loved whenever I would come back during winter break and take photos the year after, and just everyone was excited to see me. And I did not expect that when I moved to Princeton from London, and knew I wanted to go to games, and met Leo Levy, and that's so cool. His dad's coaching. How do I get a connection? sure enough, a few years later, I meet Jon and I take photos, and it's just a special place in my heart. When I see the banner in 2010, 2011, I'm like, I was somewhat a part of that team through the photos I took for PrincetonBasketball.com.
Yeah, you can't possibly ask me to answer that question after what Stephen said. So I'm gonna whatever pithy comment I would give, I'm just gonna let that one answer for the both of us. I do have one story I want to share, and that Stephen has a couple gifts. One of his gifts is identifying famous people, and the other gift is getting free things. And like, there's a lot that happens when the basketball teams are doing walkthroughs and taking bus rides. There's so much that's happening simultaneous to that. And I think about after the Ivy playoff at Yale, and there was a lot of work to do after that game because it was a significant moment with a iconic ending. And so I'm trying to upload audio and edit photos and writing for me takes a very, very, very long time. So we are clearly going to be the last people in Payne Whitney Gym. And Stephen has already sent me his photos. He doesn't have anywhere to go or anything to do. And he's like, I'm going to go see about getting a bite to eat. And I'm, super focused on what I'm working on. I'm like, okay, great. Yeah. Go off and do what you need to do. And like 10 minutes later, he comes back in with an entire pizza. And it's the Stephen Goldsmith luck where he walked into a pizza place that was about to close. And they were like, yeah, we're about to close. Please take this pizza. And so he brought it back and worked for a couple hours, probably left as they were shutting the lights off. I don't think I've ever returned. We drove straight back to Princeton. I've never, we got home at like 5 a.m, but it was like only Stephen could just walk out while not expecting anything in return and come back with a, it wasn't a full New Haven style high quality pizza, but it sure did the trick. Getting Stephen's photo in Sports Illustrated with the Kirill Court dedication picture was like, that selfishly meant a lot to me because it wasn't my photo. I didn't take that shot, but like being able to sort of legitimize what he was doing. Yeah. Like it was much harder then than now to be a website in a world of print journalism. And so to be able to do that and have him properly credited and paid and all that, which, I was able to pay Stephen, but not as much as I would have liked. That really helped like prove it in a way.
And I will never forget the photo in Sports Illustrated. It was the Monday after the ceremony, pre-iPhone, pre-everything. I'm a junior, I want to say, in high school, and I have a flip phone. And I remember Jon texting me saying, call me, like, I need your permission for something. And I'm in the middle of class, mind me thinking, what is going on that he needs my permission? And I remember like walking out of school because there was no cell reception at Princeton High School, pre-iPhones. And he's like, your photo might be in Sports Illustrated. Are you okay with that? I was like, of course. Ran to Barnes & Noble after school, got like 20 copies of Sports Illustrated. And people are like, why are you buying that many copies? I'm like, don't worry about it. And I'll just never forget. And on the cover was Tiger Woods, which I thought was really cool. And on page 16 of Sports Illustrated was the photo, and I was 16 years old. So I'll just never forget that.
Can I ask a question that we posed to Jon? Stephen, any favorite players, team, and in that same category, favorite moments or, anything that kind of come to mind?
It's very tough to list a favorite player, I would say, but there's definitely some favorite memories in terms of photography based on, their skill level and also their way they carried themselves. So I always thought Dan Mulready's always stood out because he was fun to take photos of and he was very talented and just, he always had him and I want to say maybe Will Barrett always had, interesting messages on their shoes. And I thought that was a very cool photography moment. And then just, some of my favorite memories, I would say going down to Cameron when you guys faced them. I'll just never forget that. Driving down, having Chipotle for the first time, just being on the floor at Cameron Indoor. I remember before the game, Coach K walking directly towards me and thinking, oh my God, what did I do? Sure enough, I was sitting next to his personal video guy who he just wanted to ask a question for. But I thought I was getting kicked out and I didn't know where to go. But sure enough, it all was fine, and I'll never forget that. And also the one-game playoff is such a cool moment that I was on the floor. The photo of Doug's shot, not the best photo for me, but I was able to, storm the court, get the players mobbing him, was kind of worried for my own self. But I realized I need to live in this moment and take the photos. But then the selection show, I'll just never forget going to Frisk Campus Center the next morning, finding out where you guys are going, seeing how to get there, through missing school, what the plans were. And it was a lot of fun that season. So I would say those games really stand out to me.
A game at Duke, again, with the Stephen Goldsmith luck and being around the same age as the Cameron Crazies. I turned my back for a second, and you've talked a student into giving you his Viking helmet, which then I wore on many occasions since. Yeah, 2011 was a season that I don't know if I'm going to experience something like that emotionally again. I'm not saying that I'm detached or shut off, but like it was kind of a perfect storm with Professor Bressler dying and you guys adopting Crunch and the way the end of that year played out. I mean, we've never even talked about you keeping all the players on the floor to watch Harvard celebrate at Harvard, Coach. The way the playoff happened and the way the NCAA tournament game finished, like it was, I'm getting unexpectedly emotional myself just thinking back about it. And it mattered. It was important to document. And through audio and typing and photographs and a bunch of other ways, we were able to capture it in the fashion that I think it deserved to be captured.
Yeah, I think you said it. You said what I was trying to get at. And so I'll leave it at that. I'll share with our listeners that Christian Rogolski was a young man who had a brain tumor. And as part of the Friends of Jacqueline Foundation, which is FOJ, I encourage you all to look into that. We adopted Christian and his family, Matthew and Nancy, his mother and father. They became like family to us. And we'd go over to his house. He'd come to practices. And he joined us on the bench. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to win his battle against cancer, but he will always be remembered. His brother, Alec, actually went on to Princeton and graduated. He's a proud graduate of Old Nassau, but that was tied within our run to try to win a championship and come back from those dark days of 6-23 that Stephen alluded to in my first year of coaching. There's a whole lot there, guys, and you brought it to the fore. Truly will always be indebted.
And I'll never forget the crunch 2 moments that season. The Marist game, Vernon Bug sat on the sideline on a fancy pinstripe suit, and it was closer than I think a lot of people thought at halftime. That year, Marist was not having a great year. But I remember Crunch taking photos on his Game Boy with you and Vernon and just the laughter that he saw, and through those photos, I'll just never forget. And then on a sad note, but the day that you guys honored him, having a seat with a Crunch bar on the bench was just so perfect. And I just thought, there's no other way you can honor someone. And it just was so perfect and meant a whole lot because it kind of got to know his family, but through just the journey of the season, and just thought that's a great way to honor him. And a few players, I think, wrote on their shoes something to honor him. Just was very cool, the full moments that he was involved with the program in.
I'll pose this to you. I know you guys are near and dear to Princeton basketball and to Ivy League basketball. You've been watching closely. I know we've pulled Jon closer, which has been fun. And I haven't gotten to ask Jon this. I'm asking him. I'm asking you, Stephen. As you dissect the league, as you analyze things, whether it's present or recent times, is there anything that you think would be a nice contribution or addition to the league? It can be academics, culturally, socially, anything that would improve the experience here for all those folks involved with men's basketball.
Yeah, I really think it would be great. I know there's a lot of things that happen in college basketball. I work in the sports industry, contracts, and I know how those things are worked, but I really would like it if, you could get the way an Ivy League team to have a top team come into their gym and just make it a fun environment, having a top 25 team in the Jadwin or the Palestra or something along those lines, just to increase the overall excitement around Ivy League basketball in the community. I personally think the Ivy League tournament, I can go on my opinion on that, but I think a lot of community people don't feel it's as important to go to a game because they know there's the Ivy League tournament in March. Like, not every game matters. But if you could get one big non-conference game in a home gym for an Ivy League school, showcase them to the community, the town, and see how they do, I think it could just open a lot of doors and help with just the overall community of the team in the town it's in. Would be great to see. Another thing, I think Pennsylvania and Philly have the Big Five. I would love to see a New Jersey, like New Jersey 6 or a New Jersey with all the schools in New Jersey, because there's a lot of good talent in New Jersey, and from high school to college, and just see those schools compete against each other similar to the Big Five.
Excellent point. Jon, what say you?
I would like to see more schools follow Penn's lead as far as their doing things related to social justice and equality that involve more than just highlighting your own alums of color. I was really impressed with the fact that they were highlighting specific organizations and groups in their own community that went beyond just people who had graduated from that institution. And I think there's a lead there that the other 7 schools need to follow. I just think there's such a significant difference between doing things for your community and starting down some of these roads that should have been started down a long time ago versus just, hey, look at these people who were a part of this program that are just a photograph on a Jumbotron or whatever. There's a lot more that could be done.
The best part of this show, Lawrence and I quickly identified, was our interviews, our guests, and what they bring to the table. And then, honestly, the wide range of suggestions and offerings that people have to make Ivy League basketball and the Ivy League in general just better. And the two of you have, I would say, hit a home run. Can't thank you guys enough. Almost don't want to end this interview, but, we have to. So our next guest has been a bona fide difference maker in the backcourt for the Cornell Big Red as they stand in good position, albeit not yet definitive position, for the 4th seed in the Ivy Madness Conference Tournament. As a starter and off-the-bench performer for Cornell, our guest is averaging 10.1 points per game, is second on the team in assists and steals, and leads the team in free throw made and attempted. The senior guard has saved his best for last, recording 9 of his 11 double-figure scoring games this season in conference play for a 13-point average, which is good for 11th best in ancient 8 league games. Add those accolades to his background as an all-state honoree and MVP state champion at Shawnee High School in New Jersey. the same high school where his current coach Brian Earl started in his own high school career. And you can see we have much to discuss with Cornell Big Red senior guard and leader, Dean Noll. Dean, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We are super excited. As always, I have my co-host and partner here, Lawrence L. Boogie Schuler. He's going to get us started.
Well, I just want to give Coach some perspective here. All right, you're from South Jersey.
Yes, sir.
So tell me, what's the best place to get a tail of ham and egg on a plain bagel?
We'll call it pork roll, first of all. Yeah.
That's all right. We'll forgive you.
That's
but you're
all...
0 for 1 on the pork roll.
That's all foreign. It's all. I'm in Connecticut, Dean. So this is all a foreign language to me. So bear with me.
Dean, on Wednesday, March 2nd, Shawnee plays Cherokee in the South Jersey Group 4 quarterfinal. And then the road ahead is Cherry Hill East in the semifinal and Lenape in the final. Looking back, what's the buzz around school going to be like this week?
Definitely super exciting, especially Cherokee, crosstown rival. It's always a good game and always brings out a lot of students. A lot of hype around it, typically. I know Lenape's tough this year, so hopefully we'll get another crack at them.
Dean, it sounds like you stay pretty locked in and close to the program. Are you watching those scores? Are you paying close attention?
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely still close with the head coach, Shawnee. I'm close with a couple kids on the team. Andrew Ball, who's going to Monmouth. So, yeah, I'm definitely following along, rooting for them.
Okay. Well, Shawnee High School, the moment you became a member of the program, I'm sure you were made aware of the legacy of the Earl family, particularly Dan Earl and Brian Earl. What specifically did you know about the Earl brothers? Are there any stories? Are there games that you may have heard of? And in general, what was that experience of following in those footsteps?
Coach always used to talk about them, how good they used to be, and how they were number one public school, like in the whole country. So we both had the same high school coach too, so he's still there.
Yep.
Yeah, Coach Kessler. He would always tell stories about games that they used to play and how efficient they were. There's a game on YouTube of them actually from the Tournament of Champions when Coach Earl was a freshman, and I think his brother's older.
Yep, he is.
Yeah. So.
And you've seen that a few times?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Got it. You broke the single season scoring record of Dan Earl. You're correct, the older brother of your current college coach. Talk to us about that moment for you personally. What do you remember from the game, and how many members of your family were there? Give us all that full picture.
It was special knowing I broke it just because there's so many great players who've been through Shawnee. It's just like a winning program. So that was pretty special. But I don't remember what specific game it was. It must have been later on in the year. But our main focus was just to win.
Did you have some family members there to celebrate?
My parents came to pretty much every game. They even come to every home game here at Cornell this year. They've been to every home game. Wow. They just drive up.
Wow. How long is that drive?
It's like 4.5 hours.
That's love, man. Wow.
Yeah.
If somebody has never seen you play, Dean, Lawrence and I have seen you guys a ton, but somebody who hasn't seen you play for Cornell, what is your role with the team? What do you bring to the table? How do you see yourself out there?
I see myself as like a playmaker. I can set other guys up and also can score. We play really fast, so everyone gets to touch the ball a lot, which is nice. You're
making me think of the increased pace of play. We've talked about that a ton. What was the impact? How excited were you to take on that new type of speed of offense? Talk to me about the players on the team, how they responded. How did that go down?
Yeah, well, I love it. It's such a big change from my first 3 years here. It's completely different. Pushing the ball is just awesome. It's way more fun to play like that. We've been more successful like that, clearly. But I think everyone loves it. So we have a lot of freshmen and sophomores playing. So they've never played any Ivy League games or any college games at all. So they didn't know how our program used to play in the past. So they're just adjusting to it just fine. Our juniors, too. Everyone loves playing fast. And we just have so many contributors that we're able to wear teams down. Not many teams have 11, 12 guys coming to play in Ivy League play So it keeps everyone on the bench engaged because you never know when your name's going to be called. Just rotating guys in, and you can go as hard as you can while you're out there.
What was the conditioning and the preparation to play like that? Did you prepare for the season just in terms of playing, or was there some extra, I don't know, were you guys running hills, sprints? How did you get yourselves physically ready to play this style and this fast?
Yeah, so last spring we just started playing a lot and sprinting and pretty much practicing our offense, getting in the lane, looking out for threes, looking for the shooters. But also we had been doing conditioning tests. We did a conditioning test this fall that we had to pass. It's crazy how much better shape I am now than when I first came.
It's interesting that the fun part of the basketball came through some struggle and some pain, right? To like get yourselves ready. We might have some listeners who want to play Division I basketball or just a little bit more curious about that. Talk to us about the sacrifice and struggle that you have to put in to play now a fun style.
It's definitely different. You just got to love it. You just got to keep working every day. Being in college basketball shape is definitely hard to get into, but you just got to practice every day at it, work out. You got to be great physical shape too. I know that was a struggle for me my freshman year, and sophomore year I really focused on getting my body right, which definitely helped me a lot.
Good for you. And it's shown. And then defensively, I think there's an increased style of intensity and aggression. It's not just the offense. You guys score and then you pick up right away.
Yeah.
What's that been like? Like it just to change your mindset in terms of that, instead of falling back, you guys are immediately in attack mode.
Yeah, it's definitely different. Picking up full court. I've never done that like my whole career. So that's definitely a big change, but we're able to wear down main guys of other teams because we have so many guys. We can just rotate in, so many quick guards and so many people off the bench. I think that helps a lot. Makes people miss when they're tired, honestly, at the end of the game. Our bench overall has just done a really good job at keeping energy during games, especially even when we're down or stuff's not going our way. We try to all stay together, keep the energy up. That's the toughest part to do, not getting too low. And like coming back at Harvard, even though we lost, our bench was still engaged and we were able to make a comeback, tie it up.
You guys had lost 4 of your last 5 games going into last week's Yale game. I mentioned on our show, Dean, that it took you guys actually 13 games to start of the season before you ran into your 4th loss. So that was a losing streak. I think we can all acknowledge that.
Yeah.
What was the impact of that on the team's confidence? Literally, how did you feel emotionally going into that game?
We knew we needed to win that game, so everyone was super locked in all week at practice. We wanted to keep our, Ivy tournament hopes alive, which is looking good now. But during the losses, we knew we had to stay together. We watched film, learned from it. It's just the end of the games for us right now. We need to be working on not fouling, picking good shots, and making free throws.
What was the message overall? It sounds like those are some of the X's and O's from Coach Earl. Yeah. What was the message emotionally, mentally that he shared with you guys in the film room and during practices?
Just remain calm, stay strong with the ball, and be confident. He trusts every one of us that are out there on the floor and everyone on the bench. That's why he puts us in. We all trust each other to make the right play.
Let's talk a little bit more about Cornell and Ithaca. Tell us, I have obviously been to Cornell a number of times as a coach and a player. I've visited Coach Earl there and spent some time with him, but haven't necessarily hung out in Ithaca, campus life, visiting as a recruit. Talk to us a bit about the general vibe if somebody were looking to attend Cornell University. What could they expect, day to day?
Well, obviously it's just great academics combined with great coaches and learning more about basketball here, just like any other Ivy League school. But I think what sets Cornell apart is the connections you're able to make here, and just the coaching staff right now is definitely helping us a lot, learning more. Earl has taught me so much since I've been here in 4 years. He sees things that I never really even think about and everything just has to be so precise and perfect pretty much.
The way that you're talking about Coach Earl, I mean this humbly in deference to our great legendary coach that he and I shared, Pete Carrill. The way that you're talking, he opened the game up to me in a way that I could see it in a way I'd never seen before. I remember just like timing of passes, and just the selflessness of playing for others. And do you have any examples that come to mind in terms of what Brian Earl's passed along to you?
I think just the cutting, honestly, just like the backdoor cuts that I'm able to get off in the game. He's taught me so much about like timing and reading the defender. If they turn their back or stick their arm out just a little, you're able to go by them. And Kobe's done a great job this year at leading me in those passes, throwing them out there for me to get them, make layups, and along with everyone else on my team.
Excellent stuff. In fact, I have some highlights of you getting a backdoor cut off a defender. Kobe Dixon, for our listeners who might not be as familiar with the Cornell Big Red, he's the starting center in the Princeton offense. That's a huge position. Dean Noll is second in assists to Kobe Dixon, who leads the team in assists. And so that connection has worked really well for you guys. But I can definitely relate to some of the strategy that Coach Earl has passed along to you. Let's keep going in terms of a little bit of focus on your head coach. Finish this sentence. Coach Earl loves blank.
To win.
Got it. Short and sweet. Coach Earl. Coach Earl can't stand, and I'm sure losing is how you finish that. Give me something else. Give me something else that Coach Earl can't stand.
I would say turnovers and bad shots. Turnovers and bad shots.
Okay. All right. Well, he's a true coach at heart. Started under Coach Kessler back at Shawnee High School, and then on to Pete Carrill, and now he's a tyrant against bad shots and turnovers himself. True to form, Brian Earl. Before we let you go, each and every guest that we have on the show, we ask them a question about moving forward in terms of anything that you'd like to see at Cornell or any of the 7 other Ancient 8 campuses. That could be athletics, academically, culturally, socially, could be with the basketball program. Anything that comes to mind that you think would improve the experience of the student athletes that you would love to see come to fruition.
I definitely just think one of the big ones is funding in Ivy League programs, especially here at Cornell. Some our teams don't get a lot of funding, I guess, compared to other teams around Division I programs. I think this could just help with getting recruits and just making it a better experience for some Ivy League athletes.
Sure. And specifically, would that be funding for, is it how you travel? Is it, equipment? Is it?
I think everything, overall, travel, equipment, locker room stuff, all that.
Got it. And I think certainly in terms of the resources that are available to Cornell and the Ivy League schools, there's a potential to do that. And, now we have a student athlete saying, hey, that would be something great to happen for us. I know that we had Noah Kirkwood on the show from the Harvard Crimson last week, and he mentioned that some of the resources that the men's basketball team gets, he'd love to see that across the department, whether it's, women's hoops or golf or tennis or things like that. So it sounds like student athletes in general are just trying to talk about more support and resources for what they're engaged in across the board. Well, Dean, we greatly appreciate you being on the show and representing Shawnee, your family, Cornell Big Red, and Ivy League hoops in general. We wish you the best for your last regular season game. You guys are playing at Columbia. Got our fingers crossed for you. In the meantime, we wish you all the best, and thank you again on behalf of Lawrence and myself for joining us on the Ivy League Hoops Hour. Appreciate it, Dean. Take care.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Lawrence, it's time to reach into our mailbag. And folks, We can't do this without you. It's been awesome to hear from our listenership. We know that you're with us each and every week, and we assure you we will get your comments, your suggestions, whatever comes to mind, your feeling and opinions on any kind of topics that we bring up on men's basketball in the Ivy League. You know how to get to us, ivyleaguehoopshour@gmail.com. That's how you can reach out to us. And as I mentioned last week, our mailbag was pretty full. We couldn't get everything into the show, so we rolled this one over from last week. So just keep that in mind. And we heard from David Tannenwald, who has a noticeable presence on social media, at least that I've noticed in terms of covering Ivy League basketball, Harvard basketball in particular. Let's get into his email. Thank you, David, for writing. Quote, "Hi, guys. I just listened to the podcast with Jordan Dingle and absolutely loved it. Thank you so much for everything you're doing." Thank you, David. It's been a labor of love for Lawrence and myself, I assure you. Back to your email. My question, do you think there's any chance you could get Pete Carril on the podcast? I'd really be interested to know what he thinks about Ivy League hoops now versus when he was coaching, though I realize this may not be feasible for any number of reasons. Oh, and as a background, I covered basketball for Harvard Magazine and wrote a long-form piece on Tommy Amaker for SB Nation back in 2014 and absolutely loved the league. Thanks, end quote. Well, David, it is very, very clear your love for the league and really appreciate the posts that you'll have every now and then on social media. I've noticed you a number of times. You love Ivy League hoops, Harvard Crimson in particular, and it's all good from where I stand. I did check out your article, wonderfully crafted and well done in terms of shining a light on Tommy Amaker's presence at Harvard, student engagement, student empowerment, diversity, inclusion, leadership, and oh, by the way, winning a whole lot of basketball games. So well done on your part. In terms of the Pete Carril question, you hit a home run. I mean, obviously, Lawrence and I would love to have Coach Carril on the show. Haven't reached out to him as of yet. I will say this just for some context. You know, when Coach Carril was finished as the Tigers head coach, obviously he went on to Sacramento, and Jeff Petrie recruited him to come and help out with the coaching there with Rick Adelman and Chris Webber and Vlade Divac and Peja Stojakovic. And all of a sudden they're running Princeton offense and 24-second shot clock. It was outstanding basketball. Well, when he retired from that coaching gig, he would often watch Tigers games as he does today. But he would sit all the way in the top of the stands up in Jadwin Gym for one reason. That was to enjoy the game by himself. So he didn't want to be pestered. So I offer that up to say, you know, I don't know if a podcast would be the first thing that Coach Carril would want to do. And it's not out of the question, folks. I'll say that. But I'd also offer up that it would have to be somewhat long form, like the article you wrote on Tommy Amaker. Coach Carril has a number. He's just brilliant in terms of the topics and ideas that he has, not just on basketball. So I would actually, if I could get an interview with Coach Carril, I probably wouldn't just restrict it to Ivy League hoops. So file that away, as that would be something that would take this show to a whole nother level. I can assure you that, to have a legend like Pete Carril on the podcast. And if we do, it'll be about basketball and a whole lot of other topics. Thanks for writing in, David Tannenwald. We greatly appreciate it. And we offer the same opportunity for you folks. Please reach out to us at ivyleaguehoopshour@gmail.com. We assure you we will get your suggestions, topics to cover, questions, guests, the whole gamut, all things men's basketball in the H&A. Anything that comes to you, send it to us. We get it in the show. Take it from there. Lawrence, this week I'm spreading love to the Princeton Tigers women's basketball team. They are playing fantastic on the court. They were sitting at 12-0 in Ancient 8 play, perfect undefeated record with 2 games left to go. Abby Myers leads the Tigers on the court. She's averaging 17.8 points per game. She's made 56 threes and is shooting 41% from downtown. The Tigers have 2 games left to hold on to that perfect record, and they've got some work to do. They'll play Penn on March 4th. The Quakers are led by Kayla Padilla, the leading scorer in the Ancient Eight, coming in at 18.8 points per game. And then, due to a makeup game that needs to be played, the Tigers will face off against the Harvard Crimson, led by Harmony Turner, who is actually the 3rd leading scorer in the league at 16.1. So it could be a dogfight to have that perfect record. But for this week, we are saluting and acknowledging the outstanding season that the Tigers have had on the court. Women's basketball from Princeton University. Well done, ladies.
It's time for our non-Ivy League nod. This week, I want to wish you, Coach, a happy Leroy Johnson Day.
What do you mean by that, Lawrence?
February 26th in Mishawaka, Indiana, was declared Leroy Johnson Day.
It certainly was. You caught me off guard, Lawrence. I was able to join my dad as Mishawaka High School acknowledged him as their greatest male athlete in the school's history in 1955, folks. Hope my dad doesn't kick me in the butt for saying that. But in 1955, Lawrence, his team qualified for the Elite Eight in the Indiana State Championship for boys basketball. That was when they were still doing a single class. And so that's as far as Mishawaka High School has ever gone in its school's history. My dad graduated in 1957. They had plenty of wins later on, but never was his team or any other team from Mishawaka able to match the 1955 year. And they acknowledged my dad as a member of that team and his legacy as a player, standout player for the Cavemen, Lawrence, and a superstar track athlete as well. So myself and my 2 brothers joined my dad, and it was quite an emotional time and a great community there in Mishawaka. They welcomed us with open arms, a whole lot of love, and means a lot that they gave my dad a day, his very own day in Mishawaka. I totally caught off guard, Lawrence. You got me good, and appreciate you mentioning that.
It's time for predictions.
Predictions, Pat.
Taking a look at the standings. Coach, you're sitting at 29 and 21, and it looks like I'm just enough in front at 36 and 14.
Okay. Can't hold my head high around you, Lawrence, but you've been the better man. Let's stick with you calling the shots first, and I'll see if I can even remotely keep pace with you.
Now, leave it to me. I will go 0 and 4. You'll fall just behind like Spicer Cub. But I'll throw caution to the wind and go Harvard over Dartmouth, Cornell over Columbia, Princeton over Penn, and Yale over Brown. By the way, I think Luke Benz agrees with me, going just by the numbers.
I was going to say, I wonder if you just went on Luke Benz's website and pulled off your predictions. I'll give you more credit than that. I'm with you with Yale beating Brown. Man, oh man, it's going to be tough for me to deal with Brown not being in the top 4. I'm sure it's a tough pill to swallow for Mike Martin and the guys on the team. Good players, good kids. Show outstanding student athlete to have on our show. They've got a lot to play for in terms of their pride. I just think Yale healthy now. And that's an assumption that we can't always make. That's why these predictions sometimes get thrown out the window. I'm still going to go with Yale beating Brown, but if they're not at full strength, if they don't have Jarvis, who's a key front court player for them, who knows? But officially, I'll stick with Yale over Brown. I'm going to go with Harvard beating Dartmouth. And why am I doing this? I don't know. Dartmouth's form has been outstanding. Harvard, not that they've played poorly, and in fact, they just ran up in 2 games against the best team in the league, and played them pretty well, actually. But I'm going to say holding home court, that's going to show and count for something. Harvard beats Dartmouth. Yale beats Brown. Penn, Lawrence, I think they're going to beat Princeton. I know that's crazy. I can't sing the praises, though, of Steve Donahue. Marvel at their success all season long, and then turn around and pick them to lose on their home floor in the game of the season for them, in the sense that it is a rivalry game. I know seeding doesn't change that much. I'm going Quakers beating the Tigers. I know I'm nuts, but that's what I'm going with. Cornell beats Columbia. They do need that win for the momentum, just to make sure they feel good in terms of going into Ivy Madness the right way. A few weeks ago, I predicted that Columbia would get a win in its last 6 games. But I'm going against that, and I'm going to say that the Lions will finish the season losing out. Cornell comes up with the win. Those are my picks, folks. You've heard mine. You've heard Lawrence. Lawrence has been outstanding and on a roll all season long. Let's see if it holds form just for 1 week. Can I knock him off his perch? As we battle it out back and forth, certainly don't hold back in terms of you sending us your suggestions, your picks, your predictions, whatever it is on this week's show. We'd love to hear from you. You know the drill. ivyleaguehoopshour@gmail.com. That's how you can reach us. Please do. And we'll work your feedback, your emails, your messages into the show. That's yet another show, another episode, another journey that Lawrence and I are loving, folks. That will be it for the Ivy League Hoops Hour in the books. And we cannot do this without you. Please continue to listen in and spread the word with your friends, your family, randoms that you meet on the street. Let them know about the Ivy League Hoops Hour. Encourage them to subscribe. It's not too late to join this conversation. Give us a 5-star rating. And you know how to reach us. Write to us at ivyleaguehoopshour@gmail.com and let us know how we're doing. You can also catch us on YouTube, the Ivy League Hoops Hour, and keep an eye on your Twitter account, Instagram, as we try to post teasers in terms of our upcoming guests. We'll see who we have lined up for you next week, a week that leads into Ivy Madness. How about that? We've been talking about it so long, and it is soon to be right on our front steps. For Lawrence Schuler, Jon Solomon, special guest Stephen Goldsmith, senior standout Dean Noll of the Cornell Big Red, we thank you for joining us on the Ivy League Hoops Hour. We'll see you next week.
You only think I guessed wrong. That's what's so funny. I switched glasses when your back was turned. Ha ha, you fool. You fell victim to one of the classic blunders. Never go in against a Sicilian when death is on the line.